So we have some exciting things happening right now. Yes, we do. Things are actually happening. So I have actually booked in a slot with the local craft brewery that I've been working with to actually get my beer brewed. So that will be happening on the 22nd of July. I am going to have JKB Brewing's first official ever beer will be brewed under contract for us, and it's going to be a momentous day. I know you're all going to be looking back and you're going to be telling your grandkids where you were on that day. I know you are. Like, you probably, on the actual day, you probably won't think anything special is happening on, but in, 1,000 years' time, when you look back, you'll be like, oh, that day. Just best day ever. So, yes, we've got some beer that's going to be created. So, that does mean that there's some other things that I need to do behind the scenes as well. So, I need to figure out the logistics exactly. So, I believe that the local brewery that I'm working with, they're going to help me or try to assist me where they can logistically with the first batch. So, this first batch is a pilot batch. It's only about 500 litres, so that's only about 10 kegs or so. Might be a little less depending on how much volume is lost during the whole process. So it's not a hell of a lot, especially compared to the size of or at least what I see is the size of the brewery that's making it. A lot of craft breweries out there that brew on at the commercial level, 10 kegs shouldn't be too much. So we'll see what happens there, but I will longer term have to look at getting a third party logistics company involved because it'll be much easier to store all the beer under the JKB Brewing name rather than the people that make it. And of course they probably have their own beers and whatnot that they need to store and distribute as well. And of course with regulations and all that, it probably does make it easier to have like a clear line to be like, this belongs to these people, that belongs to those people, and yeah, so gotta figure that out as well. So I gotta figure out where someone to store it for me and to distribute it, and then of course that means actually figuring out who to distribute it to and convince someone to buy the kegs off me. So luckily it's only 10 kegs to start with, so it's only a small amount. So at least I don't have to, say, get rid of 1,000 kegs or something like that. But at least with only 10, in the worst case, that's only 10 places that need to take a keg. So that should be good. So it has been a bit of an interesting process as well. So adapting my recipe to their system or, getting their feedback on it. So if you are unaware, I do have a video on the JKB Brewing YouTube channel right now where I brew the very beer that that the first commercial beer is based on, and the inspiration for that. So do check that out on the channel. There'll be a link here. So yes, so you can watch that video. I'm going to show you how to brew it, or how I brewed it. But in terms of like adapting it to a commercial system, there's a few interesting things that came up. So obviously the actual system they use. So I don't know the entire ins and outs of the system they use, but I do have the feedback they've gotten and what they've said to kind of infer a few things. So one of the things when I brew at home, I use the beer in a bag method. So that is, you have your boil kettle and then you essentially just drop a bag of grains into your boil kettle, mash tun. Well, in my case, it's the same thing. So basically I've got a big boiler that I can temperature control. So I put a bag of grains in at the mashing temps, which is usually, say like 65, 67 or so degrees. Can be slightly different for achieving different things, but usually around like the 50, 60 degree marks to get all the different things out of the grains at the different temperatures, but around there. And then once they've been steeped, I basically just pull the bag out of the boil kettle, let all the liquid from those grains drain back in, and then I let it hang there, and then I put all that sweet wort up to boiling temperature, and then I put the hops and stuff in. So it all happens in the one vessel, whereas most commercial systems Now, I don't know exactly if this is what they have, but I'm assuming it would be something similar to that, because most commercial systems would do that across two vessels, because when you've got, hundreds of kilos of grain, you can't just lift that out and let it drain. It's a lot harder. So in a lot of commercial systems and bigger systems as well, what you do is you have a mash tun where you put your grains in, you put your water in, you let that steep, and then you drain the water out of you drain the water out of that vessel, rather than, in my case, draining it out of a bag. So the grain stays in the vessel and the water comes out. And then the other thing what you do too is that you do what you call a sparge. So you basically get more water and you basically rinse or wash those grains as well, because there'll be sugar stuck to those grains. So it just helps you extract as much of the sugar from those grains as possible. And then all that water then goes into a separate vessel where you boil. So that does mean some things about the recipe that you have to worry about that I don't really need to worry about at home. So, for example, like lautering issues, which is basically just that process of, getting the water out of the grains and washing the grains and getting it into the other vessel. So in those, because I just lift the bag out, the water just drains out. I don't really need to worry about water getting stuck. Whereas in those bigger systems where you use this type of implementation, getting a stuck sparge, which is basically you go to drain the water out, or you go to wash the grains and the water doesn't actually drain out of the mash tun. That's a real issue, and so so the recipe had to be adapted for things like that. So you can add things into your beer to help loosen things up. So, for example, if you have a lot of wheat, you can add in like rice hulls, for example, which just helps because wheat can get very gummy. So it just helps loosen that up a bit so the water has somewhere to drain. So things like that, and then there's other stuff as well, because of using that type of system. Like at home, when I brew, I usually brew 11-liter batches, and I start with 15 liters of water, and then I go through the whole process, and then at the end, before putting it, or as I'm putting it into the fermenter, if I don't have enough beer, what I do is I add water to top it up to 11 liters, which is okay, because I make all my recipes assuming 11 liters. So if there's less volume than that, it's not too much of an issue. I know it sounds like it's diluting it, but I've made the recipe for 11 liters, so it's okay in that respects. Whereas with a lot of those commercial bigger brewing systems, you don't really do that. You don't sort of get your liquid out and then add water in. I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I suppose I'll learn that as I go, but at least from my knowledge and what I've seen in my beer experience and beer research and YouTube and all those other good things online and learning about this stuff, is that you basically you put in the water at the start to get out the volume you think the water you put in at the start is calculated so that you get out the volume of beer you want at the end, rather in my case where I just start with a set amount all the time and then top up if I need. So that also means some of the grains I put in had to sort of just change the mixture a little bit, just to make sure we do get enough sugars at the end to make sure I get the alcohol volume that I want as well. And of course there's other things like suppliers that they use, so as a home brewer I can get almost any yeast I want, but there's a lot of different varieties of homebrew yeasts and all that you can get. Whereas at the commercial level, it's not so simple, because it's not just as simple as getting a small packet of yeast this big. You need much more yeast, and so you need bulk amounts of yeast. And so the particular yeast that I used in the homebrew version of this beer, on that video on the channel, I don't actually think that company makes commercial yeast or makes them in commercial quantities. I did have a look on their website briefly, and I couldn't see anything about that. So, but anyway, basically the brewery I'm working with said that it'd be difficult for them to get their hands on that, but they did suggest a different yeast to use as well, that I can use for the beer. So we're going with that because it's something that they can easily get their hands on. So it's it's similar but different. So I'm sure there'll be a future update talking about all this. I don't want to spoil it all now. Want to actually make sure the beer comes out first. But yeah, so this is super exciting. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a dream come true. Having actual beer that's going to be out there in the actual market that someone is going to actually pay some actual money for. Whew. Wow. So anyway, that's the exciting news for this week, or from last week really. So this week, yeah, just continue to work with them, get some of the behind the scene business stuff that I need to do to make sure that I can sell it and all that sort of stuff, and finalize insurance and all that type of stuff, because it sounds boring, and it is a little bit boring, but mainly more annoying, because you need to figure out information that you don't have to then be able to do a lot of that sort of stuff. But you just gotta persevere and work your way through it. So do that, and of course I've got some more YouTube videos coming out, and of course Facebook, Instagram Reels, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, exciting times. We'll see where we go, and I will catch you guys in the next one. So thanks.